Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. We're going to talk about DC Comics. DC Comics, who has just brought on a new general manager who is outlining his plans for the company. And if you thought that maybe Warner Media, DC Comics learned a lesson from the downturn in comic book sales, you're sadly mistaken. You're sadly mistaken. DC Comics is going to double, triple down on politics. They're saying as much. People were wondering about this, and it seems like they're leaving the direct market basically in the dust at this point to probably push more politics in DC Comics. Actually, DC versus Marvel, DC has been the less political, I think, of the big two, but that seemed to change when Dan DiDio got gone a few months ago, and now that the company has massively restructured, by that I mean now that the company has been completely disemboweled by AT&T and Warner Media, it seems like the focus is going to be on Hollywood and diversity and inclusion and all these other buzzwords that everybody's talking about right now. Now, before we get into it, please give us a sub if you haven't done so already, guys. It means a lot, helps the channel grow. We do cover pop culture, we cover animation, we cover comics, we cover movies, pretty much whatever interests us that day, video game news and whatnot. We only cover what we're actually interested in. So we don't cover everything. I know we get a lot of people send us tips for different things, but if it's not something we're actively following or have an interest in, we probably won't cover it. But we do try to stick close to the things we do care about, and comics is one of those things for sure. DC Comics has had a massive shakeup, so we're going to be talking about that. Before we do, check out shopclownfish.com. I've been turning down this Raid Shadow Legends money for about 18 months now. We don't want to have to resort to Raid Shadow Legends. But if you guys could check out shopclownfish.com, and we have a flash sale. If you use the code SUMMEREND, you will get 20% off. 20% off whatever is available in the store. Thank you for the support. Let's talk about Daniel Cherry. He is the new general manager of DC Comics. And I gotta tell you, I saw this article and I read the headline as DC Comics hires former activist esports executive Daniel Cherry as general manager. It's Activision. Some people would say it's basically the same thing, but there we go. Now, why are people having concerns now about DC Comics besides the fact that they've just completely gutted the company, right? They've gotten rid of editors that have been there for years. And this is a continuing process of basically dismembering this company. Vertigo shut down. I don't know if Mad Magazine's still around or not. I don't know. They canceled some books. They got rid of some editors. It's been pencils down for a lot of artists. They were supposedly going to do this 5G reboot, and then they thought better that they shouldn't do it. And then they got rid of Dan DiDio, who, whether you love him or hate him, the guy did love comic books. He really did love comic books. But I don't think AT&T and Warner Media really love comic books all that much. I think they were just looking at these characters as IP to pimp out, because comic books, the margins just really aren't there. It doesn't matter. Again, if DC Comics is profitable, or Marvel Comics for that matter is profitable, are they profitable enough for some mega corporation to justify the existence of the company operating as is? And I think the answer is no. I think we've gotten our answer. We see that this is where DC Comics is in the pecking order on the totem pole over at AT&T and Warner Media. And now we have a new general manager coming from esports, which I thought was freaking weird that we had a guy coming over from esports. But here's what's concerning some comic book fans, because again, a lot of people have pointed to the heavy-handed politics in superhero comics as being part of the reason why the direct market has declined, why interest in comic books has declined overall, that people just did not want to pay an absurd amount of money to be preached at. And it sounds like DC is going to be doing more of the same. If you read this article on The Hollywood Reporter talking about Daniel Cherry, general manager of DC Comics, and you go all the way down here, it's about 7 or 8 paragraphs in, I guess, 5 paragraphs in. While always respecting the past, I also think it's our responsibility to leverage the cultural power of the DC Comics to entertain and inspire an increasingly diverse global fan base. Cherry said in a statement, "Comics have the power to create unique imagery and narratives that can move the world toward a better, more inclusive version of itself. It's my sincere hope that I am able to contribute and help evolve the brand and its relevance for generations to come." Translation: this is a large platform that can be used for activism. It would be a real shame not to use it. That is my takeaway from this. Now, I'm not saying I don't know anything about this guy, right? I'm not saying that Daniel Cherry doesn't actually like comic books. I'm not saying that he's there solely to use comics as a political platform, but it does sound to me that that is absolutely part of the agenda that he has going into this. Now, the hiring frees up Jim Lee, who is basically at this point the company mascot. I don't know what he actually does over there now. The hiring frees up Jim Lee, the chief creative officer and publisher, to take on expanded responsibilities surrounding the overall DC brand, according to DC. It doesn't sound like he's going to be in charge of the comic books per se, which made the announcement. DC made the announcement. The company said that Lee will bring his unmatched creativity, passion, and innate knowledge of the DC characters and canon to the company's efforts to evolve the brand and create relevance for new audiences around the world. He's expected to work closely with Cherry. Translation: Jim Lee is here to be the mascot. He's here to give us geek cred because every comic book fanboy knows who Jim Lee is. He is a modern day legend, so we have to keep at least Jim Lee around just so people know that we're still sort of, kind of, maybe, possibly, sort of interested in making comic books. I don't think Jim Lee is there to actually steer the ship. I think he's there to basically just be the, I guess, I've heard some people say the Stan Lee of DC Comics. I don't even know if it's that. I think it's basic geek cred. And you can't just, throw this guy into it anyway. So Cherry has a background in marketing, and he's done a lot of other things, esports and all of that. So the concern people have, of course, is that DC has learned nothing. And I have to tell you, I think DC has learned nothing. But again, you're making the assumption that Warner Media, that AT&T gives a shit about comic books, that they give a shit about the direct market, and that is not the case. They don't. They're interested in creating a global brand of characters they can whore out in video games and movies and underoos and candy bars and all of this other stuff. It's not really about the comic books. If you want to know what the future of comic books looks like from DC Comics, just look at Wonder Woman of history, celebrating real-life heroes, including AOC, who gets her own Tumblr. This is a DC comic, guys. Beyond the fact that nearly everybody that's being covered in this Wonder Woman of history, which we did a separate video on, by the way. In fact, we're talking about Wonder Woman, how the last couple of years she's been used to push back against mansplaining. I wish this book had as nice art as that mansplaining page from a couple of years ago, but it does not. This looks like a Tumblr comic, not even a Tumblr comic. This looks like a really, kind of low budget, middle grade graphic novel. Not even quite Scholastic level. I mean, this is a DC Comics, guys. DC Comics is publishing this Wonder Woman of history with a bunch of modern day celebrities and politicians, of course, all of whom are on one particular side of the aisle. So they're not really women of history, but yeah, AOC gets her own Tumblr comic. I mean, this whole book looks not very professional, not DC Comics level anyway. I mean, I could see something like this coming out from First Second Books. I could see something like this coming out from like a traditional book publisher, which is the market they're going for. But this is not a DC Comics level book. But this is where they're probably going to go. Now, this was honestly put into production long before Daniel Cherry came into it, but I have to wonder if we're not going to see more of this. And less of the Jim Lee style Batman, Anyway, so the comments, though. The comments. AOC and Beyonce are totally more inspiring role models than Sally Ride, Marie Curie, Amelia Earhart, and Margaret Thatcher, said no one ever. The Wonder Women of history are mostly American and allied to their Democratic Party. Seems legit and totally not ideologically motivated. I guess Marie Curie, Sophie Scholl, and Harriet Tubman don't rise to the same level as AOC and Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's in it too. Pure propaganda. 2 first-term congresswomen who collectively have an IQ equal to room temperature. Ouch. Yeah. This is DC Comics 2020, guys. It's over. DC Comics has learned nothing. I am hoping I am wrong. I'm going to give Daniel Cherry the benefit of the doubt, but I absolutely think he was brought in to create more of this. Judging by his own statements, you know, he's not really talking about the superhero characters so much as he's talking about the platform. And that's always concerning. When somebody talks about the platform and how they intend to use the platform versus the respect they have for the existing characters, you know there's trouble coming. So this is DC Comics going forward, guys. It's been a good run. We had, what, like 80 years, I guess, of DC Comics. Maybe knock off the last couple for being really stupid. But this is it, and they're keeping Jim Lee around as a pet. Basically at this point, just so the fanboys don't get mad. But this is where they want to go with things. I thought they had learned. I thought Warner Media especially had learned a few lessons from the Joker debacle, that they learned a few lessons from the Snyder Cut debacle, but apparently not. Apparently not. All right, so I'm going to wrap this one up, guys. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk to you later.